All right, let's just get right into it. We all know that most startups, well, they fail. But the real question is why? So often the seeds of that failure are planted super early on, right in the first 500 days. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the 10 biggest and most avoidable mistakes that can trip up even the most brilliant founders out there.
So what is it that actually kills most startups? I mean, if you ask founders, you'll get a laundry list of reasons, right? They'll talk about running out of cash, being in the wrong market, bad partnerships, not having the right expertise. The list just goes on and on. It's a total minefield, and the stakes are just incredibly high from the moment you start.
But here's the thing you have to remember. It's not supposed to be some straight line to success. That journey from just having an idea to actually having a product people can buy, it's what the source calls a dynamic learning process. And really, all that means is that it's all about adapting, learning on the fly, and being ready to pivot and course correct when you inevitably hit those roadblocks, because you will hit them.
And look, while some mistakes are just going to happen, that's part of the game, our source points out 10 really common errors that are, and this is the key part, avoidable. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to break them down for you into 3 clear phases of a startup's life.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning with phase 1. This is all about the super important groundwork you absolutely have to do before you even think about writing code or building a prototype. This is where you lay the entire foundation for everything that comes next.
Believe it or not, the first 4 big mistakes all happen right here, before a single thing gets built. And they usually happen because founders get so excited, so swept up in their amazing idea, that they just forget to ask these 4 fundamental questions you see here. They skip the hard research, and they don't lock down a specific audience that has a real, painful problem they can actually solve.
And this leads to a classic trap. You've probably heard a founder say this before, right? My product is for everyone. They fall in love with their idea and start thinking it's so revolutionary that every single person will want it. I mean, it sounds ambitious, but honestly, it's a really dangerous way to think.
Yeah, this kind of thinking it's a recipe for failure. It's that simple. When you try to be everything to everyone, what happens? Your projections get totally unrealistic, and you lose all focus in your marketing and your product development and your entire strategy, really.
And the source here puts it perfectly. If you don't have a specific customer in mind, you really are just shooting in the dark. Think about it. Your chances of actually hitting something, of succeeding, they just skyrocket the moment you start building a product that solves a very real problem for a very specific group of people. That's your bullseye. That's your target.
All right, let's move on to phase 2. So, you've done the hard work, you've validated your idea, you know exactly who your audience is, and now you actually have a product. This next phase is all about that super critical first contact, the moment your creation meets its very first users.
Pretty much every founder feels this constant tug of war. On one side, you've got the urge to perfect the product, make it amazing. On the other, you're feeling the pressure to just get it out there fast. The big mistake here is giving into that pressure and rushing to market with something that's buggy or unfinished, especially before you've proven product-market fit. The real key is to launch with a design that's basic but usable, with core features that work, but only after you're sure a specific market actually wants what you've built.
So getting those first few customers feels amazing, right? But that's just one battle. The next war is keeping them, and that brings us to a really important metric: customer churn. All that means is the rate that your customers decide to leave. And let me tell you, a high churn rate can absolutely kill a young startup. And one of the biggest causes is, you guessed it, a totally avoidable mistake.
And that mistake? It's just plain poor customer service. Think about it. If your onboarding process, that first experience someone has with your product, is bumpy or confusing, they're never going to see the incredible value you've built. It doesn't matter how great the product is underneath, they're just going to churn. Or, and this is way worse, they'll go straight to social media and tell the entire world about their bad experience.
Okay, let's head into our final phase, phase 3. So at this point, you've launched, you've got some real users, and you've hopefully ironed out those early customer service kinks. Now the whole game shifts. The challenge is all about growth.
How do you scale up from just a product into a real, sustainable business without falling on your face?
So, your product is officially out in the wild. You're juggling a million things. Marketing, sales, operations. There's so much noise. But in the middle of all that chaos, who is the single most important person you should be listening to? Any guesses? It's your users. I know, it sounds super obvious, right? But you'd be surprised how many founders get so laser-focused on getting new customers that they completely forget to check in with the ones they already have. And that's where the real gold is. You need to talk to your early adopters. You need to take every single complaint seriously, and yes, you even need to talk to the people who churned. I know that's not going to be a fun phone call, but figuring out why they left, man, that information is absolutely priceless.
This whole idea of listening brings us to another huge question about focus. As that pressure to grow starts to build, you have very limited time and even more limited resources. So where do you point them? Where should your focus be?
Well, the classic mistake here is chasing investors when you should be chasing customers. It's so tempting, isn't it, to think that if you just had more money, all your problems would disappear. But here's the hard truth. More money can't fix a product that nobody is buying. When you chase customers, you're actually proving you have a winning product. And guess what? A growing base of paying customers is the #1 thing that naturally attracts investors to you.
Yeah, let this one really sink in for a second. A great idea will not ensure funding. It just won't. What does get you funding, what keeps the lights on and the business afloat, is having a model where the product basically pays for itself. And that only happens when you have a growing tribe of loyal, paying customers.
Okay, and this brings us to another one of those famous and famously wrong sayings you hear all the time in the startup world. You know the one, build it and they will come. It's this romantic idea that if you just create a truly fantastic product, customers will magically find you and line up at your door.
Let's be perfectly clear about this. That is not a strategy. Hope is not a business plan. Look, word of mouth is amazing when it happens, but it is almost never enough on its own. You have to be out there actively investing in sales, in marketing, and in growth hacking. You know, all those creative, low-cost ways to get and keep users. That's how you get real traction and build a business that can actually scale.
So, there you have it. We've just walked through the startup gauntlet, those first critical 500 days. Let's take a second to bring it all together and think about what this really means for your own journey. So, here's the path we've laid out, in a nutshell. Phase 1. It's all about validating your idea and knowing your market before you build anything. Phase 2. You gotta launch right and obsess over creating a positive user experience. And finally, Phase 3. This is where you scale, but you do it sustainably by always focusing on your customers and their feedback. And all of this brings us to one final, absolutely crucial mistake. Maybe the 11th mistake. Not seeking out mentors or just asking for help when you need it. So I'm going to leave you with this one question to think about. Now that you know the 10 biggest mistakes, are you going to make the next one by thinking you have to navigate this whole crazy journey all by yourself? Thanks for joining us.